Emily Longley, born in England in 1994 to Mark and Caroline Longley, became a big sister 2 years later when her parents welcomed Hannah. The sisters shared a close bond from childhood, growing up in a loving and caring family. At the ages of 9 and 7, Emily and Hannah moved with their parents to New Zealand, settling in Auckland. After immigrating, Emily fell in with the wrong crowd, prompting her middle-class parents to send her back to the UK to start anew with her grandparents. In 2010, she flew to England to study at Brockenhurst College, aiming for a business degree and dreaming of a modeling career. She lived in Bournemouth with her grandparents, a coastal town in Dorset known for its popularity as a resort destination. While Emily pursued her goals in England, her sister Hannah remained in New Zealand, where their parents, though divorced, maintained a friendly relationship. Emily's beauty and charm naturally drew attention, and she eventually met 20-year-old Elliot Turner, who left a strong impression on her. Their acquaintance gradually developed into a romantic relationship. In April 2011, Emily returned to New Zealand for a family visit after 6 months apart. Her father met her at the airport, where she ran to him, hugged him tightly, and expressed how much she had missed him. The bond between Emily and her father was especially close. He cherished her smile, laughter, and sense of humor. The following day, the whole family went to Emily's favorite pizzeria. She told her parents that apart from studying in college, she was engaged in modeling and made some incredible friends. She also mentioned the man she was dating, 20-year-old Elliot Turner. They had only been dating for a few months, and it seemed to her that she was too young for something serious. "I think I'm going to end it when I go back," she said. Emily spent the next few weeks hanging out with friends and family. She had a wonderful time. No one suspected they would soon lose her. When Emily's flight started boarding, it was hard for her to say goodbye to her family. However, Emily promised she would be back in 5 months. She wanted to see the matches of the Rugby World Cup, which was to begin on September 9th. While texting with her father a few days later, Emily informed him about breaking up with Elliot, but she did not go into details. Elliot behaved strangely after seeing the photos of Emily that she posted on social networks while in New Zealand. There were guys in these photos, and Elliot was very jealous. The son of a wealthy jeweler, Elliot Turner, was 20 years old, and his life seemed carefree. Turner was well known in the local bar and club scene in the Bournemouth and Poole areas, and was part of a gang of wealthy young men called the Firm. Called by his friends All Talk Turner because of his boasting, he met Emily in December 2010. The couple enjoyed the high life at the resort and often had fun until late at night. But Turner, who had a history of obsession with women, soon showed signs of jealousy. As a result, their relationship quickly escalated into violent arguments. Some people described him as a person displaying a threatening, aggressive, violent, controlling, and possessive nature. In January 2008, when he was 16, he received a harassment warning letter from the police telling him not to contact his ex-girlfriend after he bombarded her with text messages and emails because she broke up with him. Turner loved being at the center of attention. He didn't need to work for a living. His parents gave him everything he needed. Elliot skillfully manipulated people, including his parents. His life was all about parties, women, alcohol, and illegal substances. He considered himself a man who can do anything he wants. Elliot carried a hammer with him in case anyone tried to contradict him. His friends believed that Turner fancied himself a gangster and wanted to become the one everyone turned to for help. He could come to the bar and buy everyone a drink. Elliot bragged about driving a new Mini Cooper, but it was a gift from his grandmother. He tried to maintain his bad boy image with a series of supposedly streetwise messages on social networking sites where he often referred to himself as Scarface or God. He didn't lack female attention, but when he met Emily, he became very attached to her. She complimented his image of a successful person, which he worked hard to create. As their relationship developed, Turner started showing his controlling behavior more and more often. He even threatened Emily that he would take her life. In an emotional plea to Turner, Emily wrote a note to him a few months before her death saying, 1. I love you. 2. Don't say you'll kill me. 3. Stop talking about your ex-girlfriends. 4. Stop being so constantly aggressive. Be more cool because that is so much more hot. and you make me scared because you're so intimidating. When Turner began to show his true face and when his controlling behavior started to go beyond all reasonable limits, Emily realized that he was not the person she wanted to be with. However, people like Turner don't understand rejection. On the evening of May 6, 2011, Emily was with friends in one of the entertainment venues. Surveillance cameras captured how she came to a nightclub with her friends. That evening, Turner read her Facebook messages and discovered that Emily was dating another man. Pissed him off. He came to the club and started arguing with Emily. This whole story ended with the girl throwing her drink in his face. Turner verbally abused her and threatened her with violence. He didn't like Emily's outfit. He thought it was too revealing. He dismissed the fact that Emily had broken up with him. The man wasn't going to let her go. Elliot ruined her evening, so she decided to leave. Yet her ex-boyfriend followed her. His friends heard him say, "I will kill her. I will go to prison for it and still be a millionaire. I would do 10 years. It wouldn't bother me." Turner caught up with Emily, somehow persuading her to go to his house. He said he wanted to talk in a more relaxed atmosphere. Elliot Turner lived with his parents. Perhaps that's why Emily went with him. Maybe she thought he would behave more calmly in the presence of his parents. Neighbors saw them go inside the house. The following morning, Anita Turner, Elliot's mother, called the emergency service saying Emily was not waking up. It was about 9 a.m. Before the arrival of the ambulance, Anita listened to the operator's instructions on how to help Emily. Unfortunately, when the ambulance arrived, the only thing they could do was to state the death of Emily Longley. Anita was an Indonesian citizen who came to the UK to marry Lee Turner. When the couple had a son, they did not deny him anything, which was a big mistake. During her conversation with the emergency service operator, Anita's voice did not sound like the voice of a mother who had just found her son's girlfriend dead. She was too calm, as if nothing unusual had happened. Thousands of miles from England, in New Zealand, Emily's father, Mark, woke up at 2 in the morning and saw a bunch of missed calls from his ex-wife Caroline and younger daughter Hannah. There was also a voice message from Hannah, but Mark could barely make out what she was saying. Then he heard Caroline scream in the background and her words, "Emily is dead." Mark refused to believe it. He called his mother in England. When she answered, his whole world fell apart. His mother was crying hysterically. Moments later, one of the police officers took her phone. "I'm sorry to tell you that your daughter Emily is dead," he said. Mark couldn't believe it. After all, Emily was sitting on his couch and smiling just a week ago. Flying to the UK, the grief-stricken father still refused to believe that his daughter was dead. But unfortunately, it wasn't a dream. The loss of the eldest daughter was a heartbreaking challenge for Emily's parents. The police told them that Emily had died in her sleep. It didn't make any sense. She was young and healthy. The police collected some evidence, but it was unclear what happened to Emily. They had to wait for the autopsy results. Elliot Turner's parents, Anita and Lee, told investigators they had been home all night and had not heard anything suspicious. Elliot publicly mourned Emily by posting photos of them together on his Facebook page. The police had nothing bulletproof to refute the story of Turner and his parents that Emily mysteriously died in her sleep. During the investigation of any death, the main factor is to determine the cause of it. When investigators discover the cause of the victim's death, they understand what they are dealing with and how to conduct an investigation. While waiting for the autopsy results, the investigators found out that a few days before her death, Emily had posted something strange on her Facebook page. "I have a stalker," she added. "Someone just called me." And I was like, "Who's this?" And they were like, "You don't know me, but I know everything about you." And I was like, "How did you get my number?" And he was like, "I'll tell you when I see you," and kept asking me out. So I hung up and they won't stop calling. Emily wrote on Thursday, May 5th. At the same time, the police managed to find out that before her death, Emily quarreled with Elliot Turner in front of other nightclub guests. After interviewing Turner's friends, investigators learned that he tried to control Emily's every move, that he found out about her meeting with another man, and most importantly, that Elliot threatened to take her life many times. But his friends did not attach any importance to this. believing that these were just words with which Turner strengthened his image of a gangster. The autopsy did not give an exact cause of Emily's death. However, experts mentioned it could be strangulation, and one of them said the physical findings are entirely consistent with pressure being applied to the neck. Investigators believed that one of the Turner family members could be involved in Emily's death, so they decided to install listening devices in their house. The police were hoping to find out if they were hiding anything, and they were right to do that. They heard Elliot instructing his mother on how to behave with the police and what she needed to say. His father, Lee Turner, seemed to be the only person who understood what he was doing was wrong. But eventually, he submitted to the will of his son and wife. While listening to the recordings, investigators also heard what happened to Emily Longley. Elliot Turner admitted that he caused her death. They arrested Elliot Turner a week after Emily's death. He, of course, denied his guilt. His lawyers tried to challenge the authenticity of those audio recordings. However, having studied all aspects of this case, the judge allowed the prosecution to use the recordings as evidence. Not knowing the police were listening, Elliot admitted that he felt angry every day and that no one had ever pissed him off as much as Emily. During the trial in May 2012, his lawyer stated that their client acted in self-defense. Elliot Turner said that the quarrel in his bedroom turned violent, and he had to grab Emily by the neck. He said he didn't strangle her. He just found her dead in his bed the next morning. During the second day of the trial, Turner told the court that he was disgusted by his actions that night. Allegedly, after finding Emily dead, he wrote a letter to his mother saying how ashamed he was and that he was leaving for Spain. One can assume Elliot Turner was going to leave the country on the day of Emily's death, but changed his mind for some reason. When the police arrived at Turner's home after the 999 call, they saw packed bags. Elliot's passport was in his pocket. He admitted in court that he had threatened Emily and felt upset and deceived the night before her death after seeing false emails on her phone saying he had smashed her face into a table. When describing the fight they had before her death, he mentioned Emily started beating him with her hands and feet. He tried to calm her down before giving up and throwing her a 20-pound note for a cab. He said, "She just ignored me at first. Then 5 seconds later, she just went crazy. I had never seen Emily get to that point of rage. I didn't know what to do. She would not stop. I kept repeating myself, 'Stop it. Calm down.' At that point, I grabbed her by the neck using my right hand." Defense counsel Anthony Dunn asked, "Why did you do that?" Turner replied, "To stop her going nuts. I did not know what to do. My right hand made contact with her neck." When the defense counsel asked how hard he grabbed her, Turner replied, "I would not say very hard, but it was quite hard. I grabbed her and pushed her down onto the bed. I pressed down on her neck when she was in the lying down position." He said he held her there for 5 or 6 seconds, then let go and stormed out of the room. When asked if he intended to kill Emily, Turner replied no. He said he thought Emily had gone to sleep. Allegedly, he realized Emily was dead only when she did not wake up the following morning. In an interview with the Herald newspaper, Emily's father, Mark, spoke about how hard it was for him to lose his daughter. "Here is the thing about death. It sucks. It doesn't matter if it is your child, your partner, or your 99-year-old grandmother. It sucks. That a person is there one day and not the next, well, it is not something we can deal with easily. All anniversaries are hard. Birthdays are hard. Christmas is hard. Easter is also tough because it was the last time I really spent time with her," Mark Longley said. He said the heaviest part was that he would never see the woman she could have become. "I miss seeing the life she was denied unfold. We had a brief glimpse of the woman she was becoming, and I was so proud of her. I am her father and, of course, am biased, but the world really was a better place with her in it. It was certainly a lot more fun." At the trial, they portrayed Elliot Turner as a spoiled, wealthy kid whose parents wanted to help him escape punishment. The court heard he was given the run of the family's home in the affluent Queen's Park area of Bournemouth, where he would hold parties for his middle-class friends. Described as wild by his father, Lee, he was given his own living space in the converted garage of his parents' house, so he could come and go without disturbing them. It was in his room, which had its own mini bar, that he strangled Emily on his bed. The police examined the computers seized from Turner's and found the following search queries: death by strangulation and how to avoid punishment for a crime. The main motive of the crime was jealousy. The court heard testimony from Luke Ashford, who spent the night with Emily. As already mentioned, Elliot Turner found out about it. Even while in custody, Turner boasted that the jury would believe his twisted story that Emily had attacked him, and he had acted in self-defense when he strangled her in a fit of jealousy. In letters from his prison cell to his friends, he said he would soon drive a new Range Rover and move to Spain. He planned to sell the rights to his story and live a fashionable life. However, the jury quickly shattered his illusions when they found him guilty. On May 22, 2012, the court sentenced Elliot Turner to life in prison with a minimum term of 16 years. Announcing the verdict, Mrs. Justice Dobbs described Turner as a man of striking arrogance. She said, "Emily was a lovely, kind, fun-loving girl who brought a ray of sunshine to those she touched. That light has been extinguished suddenly and needlessly by you. You did not love her. She was just a trophy. The relationship, if it can be called that, was all about you. It was about control you carried out using aggression and threats. You can put away thoughts of champagne, Bentleys, and girls, and concentrate on the reason you are serving a life sentence." Mrs. Justice Dobbs also sentenced Turner to 9 months to run concurrently for perverting the course of justice. But Elliot Turner wasn't the only person on trial. His parents, Anita and Lee, whom Turner used for cash to fund his lavish partying, loved their son so much they tried to cover his crime. Lee destroyed Turner's confession letter, and Anita took the jacket from the bedroom where the letter allegedly was. His mother even postponed calling an ambulance so her son could cover his tracks and let the family come up with a convincing story for the police. When asked why she did not call an ambulance, Anita Turner replied that she did not believe Emily was dead. Under cross-examination, they asked her if she thought Emily had ruined her son's life. After a pause of 6 seconds, she replied, "No." In the recording, Lee asked Anita whether they had done the right thing. "We've done the right thing," Anita replied. Both 51-year-old Anita Turner and 54-year-old Lee Turner were found guilty of perverting the course of justice and sentenced to 27 months in prison. Mrs. Justice Linda Dobbs said, "The two of you chose to fight the case showing little remorse. Mr. Turner, you claimed you didn't know the contents of the letter when you destroyed it. But the fact it was burning on your conscience is quite evident from your anguished tone of voice on the tape." Released in 2013 after serving half of their sentence, they still live in the house where Emily Longley died. Emily's dad, Mark, broke down as he spoke about the verdicts after the case. Supported by former wife Caroline and daughter Hannah, he said, "What we have heard over these 5 weeks has shocked us and disgusted us. That a man so evil like Turner could treat a gentle and loving girl like Emily so violently is beyond belief. We are so proud of the fact that she had come halfway around the world to cause a better life for herself. This is a life Turner decided to end." Mark said there was a lot of talk about Turner's boasting and that no one had taken his threats seriously until it was too late. He added, even his mother did not take him seriously when he texted her to tell her he was going to break Emily's neck. Perhaps if someone had taken his threats seriously, Emily might be with us today. I hope Turner suffers every day in prison for what he has done. In October 2020, the press reported that Elliot Turner's cellmates had beaten him in prison. It happened after he hung up photos of Emily in his cell and boasted of receiving letters from female fans. Some of his cellmates attacked him after he said he would soon return to his life full of champagne, Bentleys, and birds. In 5 years, Turner will have the right to apply for early release from prison. One can only hope that common sense will prevail and that the parole board will make the right decision regarding a person who still has no remorse for his actions. The case of Jordan Worth, a sadist with an angelic appearance, captured national attention in 2018. Domestic violence statistics are notoriously difficult to compile, as many victims never seek help, fearing embarrassment or disbelief. Countless individuals endure years of abuse, beatings, and humiliation, with the full extent of their suffering often coming to light only after tragedy strikes. In many cases, these grim statistics are tied to fatalities. Jordan Worth's case stood out not just for its brutality but also for challenging preconceived notions. This seemingly delicate woman shattered the stereotype that abusers in relationships are predominantly male, leveraging the assumption that men, as the physically stronger gender, are more often the aggressors. Worth became the first woman in British history to receive a prison sentence for domestic violence and coercive control, charges that had previously led only men to incarceration. Though a tragedy was narrowly averted in this case, the details remain shocking. Worth, a young woman and mother of two, nearly tortured the father of her children, Alex Skeel, to death. The situation raises pressing questions. How could events escalate to such a point? And why did Skeel endure such inhumane treatment without seeking help, even when his life was clearly in jeopardy? Alex Skeel's life before he met Jordan Worth. Alexander was born in 1995, August 17th, in a town called Kingston upon Hull, in a fairly well-to-do, friendly, and loving family. He and his twin brother were welcome and long-awaited children, but they were born much earlier than expected, because of which doctors seriously feared for them and did not make any prognosis. The boys spent the first months of their lives in the hospital in special chambers for premature babies with critically low body weight. But thanks to the efforts of experienced doctors, the children soon recovered. True, Alexander's brother gained weight faster, and by the first birthday, he had practically no traces and consequences of prematurity. But Alex himself turned out to be weaker. Moreover, he suffered from excessive accumulation of fluid in the brain, hydrocephalus, because of which he received a disability. Nevertheless, Alexander's health problems from birth did not affect his intellectual development, and physically, he was not much different from his peers and even actively engaged in sports at school. Spouses Skeel adored their sons. From infancy surrounded them with love and care, as well as spared no effort and money to give them a good education and provide a better life. After graduating from high school, both brothers entered the prestigious Bedford College, where they continued their studies. Alexander was smart enough, had an attractive appearance, tried to regularly attend the gym, and in general enjoyed success with the opposite sex. Except that, unlike his brother who willingly went on dates and had affairs, he was quite shy and more focused on his studies. Love at first sight. It was in college that Alex met a young beauty named Jordan Worth. The girl was his age. She grew up in a wealthy family, and from a young age she knew almost nothing to refuse. She dressed beautifully and expensively, carefully watched her appearance, and led an active social life. Jordan was considered one of the most popular girls in college, which tried to court many guys. In addition, she, in parallel with her studies, worked as a volunteer raising funds and organizing assistance to local shelters for homeless animals as well as starving children in Africa. Worth was even repeatedly recognized for her efforts and for trying to make the world a better place. At first glance, this girl seemed a real angel in the flesh, kind, sympathetic, in addition, intelligent, and beautiful. Alexander fell in love with her at first sight, but at first thought that bright and popular Jordan will not even pay attention to him. However, as it turned out, he also immediately appealed to her, and she herself became the initiator of their acquaintance. Worth was much more experienced in amorous affairs, but for modest skill, she was the very first love of his life. Young people in love spent a lot of time together and were practically inseparable. In college, they were called the most beautiful couple, which was very flattering to Jordan. The first 6 months of the relationship were filled with love, romance, and mutual respect. Students tried to make each other pleasant surprises, gave cute gifts on small, but already so important for them dates. In their accounts in social networks, daily appeared joint photos on which they were happy together. The pictures were accompanied by touching captions and declarations of love. From the outside, it seemed that these two were simply made for each other and a long and happy life was ahead of them. Quite quickly, the young people decided to live together and rented an apartment. Since they were both still students, significant financial assistance was provided by their parents, who, by the way, were not against the relationship of the couple. Jordan even liked Alexander's parents because she seemed to be a serious girl, planned to become a teacher of art history, and in general made a positive impression on others. However, time passed and Worth's behavior began to change. It all started with increased control, which increased with each month of their life together. The woman demanded from her young man to report to her every step, unapologetically checked his personal correspondence in the phone, email as well as social networks, arranged wild scenes of jealousy literally in the same place and without any reason. Alexander tried not to pay attention to this because he was in love and such behavior of his passions did not bother him too much. Even when the beloved began to choose his own clothes, forcing him to wear only what she buys, the guy wrote it off as care on her part. Soon, the woman began to limit the circle of socialization of her boyfriend. Jordan herself chose with whom and when he can see and with whom he can no longer keep in touch. Under this separation fell not only friends and fellow students of skill, but also members of his family. As Worth got away with it, her boyfriend never complained to anyone, and they continued to look like a happy, perfect couple in public and on social media. The young lady began literally to revel in her impunity. She deleted contacts from Alexander's phone, without his knowledge blocked his family and friends, and even responded to messages on his behalf, often in a rude and insulting form. And after Jordan erased the correspondence so that the guy did not even know what he said to people from which they no longer wanted to communicate with him. The last straw and the breakup. The first alarm was raised by Alexander's twin brother when Jordan began to prevent their communication. By that time, the parents of the brothers also noticed that Alex distanced himself from the family, and his beloved and it all began to avoid them, refusing to come to visit even on holidays and not wanting to communicate even on the phone. And on all attempts to get in touch with her, the woman was frankly rude. In those rare moments when the mother was able to get through to her son, she asked him to leave his chosen one, warning that nothing good will come out of this affair. But the young man in love did not want to listen to anyone and defended his girlfriend, claiming that she just so takes care of him and does not wish anyone anything bad. Soon, the Skill family became aware that Worth forced their son to drop out of college, leave sports, and get a job. At the same time, the woman took away from her lover all the money he earned and spent it on his own needs and entertainment. Then the parents again made an attempt to talk to their son and convince him to leave Jordan, but their efforts were again unsuccessful. In 2013, during the celebration of his adulthood, Worth committed a disgusting act, which she got away with. On that day, she and her friends celebrated the solemn event in a country hotel. And at some point closer to the night, when the guests have already begun to disperse, the woman, without saying anything to anyone, simply disappeared. Alexander literally went crazy trying to find his beloved and worried that something might have happened to her. She returned to their room in the morning being in a state of strong alcoholic intoxication. And when the guy tried to find out where she was, she just attacked him with fists and insults and then laughed and said that she was going to report to him. 2 months later, while celebrating Alexander's own 18th birthday, Jordan got into a fight in front of her boyfriend's family and friends. She beat up a 15-year-old girl neighbor whom the Skill family knew well and had invited to the family party. Worth thought the woman was talking too sweetly to Alex, so she attacked her, pulling her hair and scratching her face. Jordan was barely calmed down, but it was clear to everyone what she was really like. After that, parents and brother insisted that Alexander broke up with the girl who behaved so aggressively and inadequately. Surprisingly, but the guy listened to them for the first time and agreed that his chosen one overreacted. The same evening he talked to her and said that he would not return to their apartment, but would stay to live in his parents' house. The reunion and the birth of their shared children. It's been almost 6 months since the couple broke up. Alex returned to his studies, but continued to work. He almost no longer thought about Jordan when on the eve of New Year's Eve 2014, she unexpectedly called and informed him that she was pregnant and in the spring, they would become parents. The guy was surprised and delighted with such news, and the woman apologized to him and said that she had not informed him earlier because she was sure that he did not want to see her anymore. The parents of the guy, having learned that they will soon have a grandchild, also melted and themselves offered the woman to move into their house. Worth agreed and moved into the Skill family home. She officially married the father of her child. And 3 months later, she and Alexander had a common son, William. The young parents and grandparents were unspeakably happy, and until about mid-fall 2014, they lived amicably and quietly. It was a short period when Jordan really cared about her chosen one, tried in every possible way to please him, and fell in love with the guy anew. When William was 6 months old, it turned out that the girl was pregnant again. At this time, she again became capricious and hysterical and demanded from Alexander that they immediately move out of his parents' house. The guy wrote off such behavior on raging hormones, but agreed to rent them housing in the city where they soon moved. In the summer of 2015, the couple had a second common child, a girl to whom they gave the name Alice. Alexander was absolutely happy and literally carried his wife and children in his arms. But Jordan, finally convinced that the chosen one will not go anywhere from her now, showed the darkest corners of her soul. The turning point. After the move, Worth again forbade her husband to communicate with his family and did not let his parents see their grandchildren. At the same time, the woman willingly accepted from them financial assistance and sometimes even made Alex himself to ask his parents for money. In just a few months, she completely subjugated his will, breaking him psychologically, and took his life under her total control. Jordan regularly humiliated and insulted her husband, and at one point, she started hitting him. At first, not violently, as if testing how he would react, how he would behave, and when the woman realized that her husband would tolerate everything, would not tell anyone and nothing would happen to her for this. She gave free rein to her cruelty, displaying sophisticated sadistic tendencies towards him. It all started when they started renovating their house and the woman was constantly dissatisfied with everything Alexander did. He carelessly noted that it was simply impossible to please her, after which a hammer flew into his head, leaving a deep wound. The bewildered guy fell down and almost lost consciousness. Clasping the wound with his hand, he felt blood running down his face. Then he asked his wife to help him or call an ambulance, to which she indifferently replied, "Crawl away somewhere and die," and then just went into another room to watch TV. Alex treated the head himself, didn't go to a doctor, and didn't say anything to anyone. From that moment on, Jordan was convinced that whatever she did, she could get away with it and her husband would never complain to anyone and certainly would not go to the hospital or the police. 3 years of hell. The next 3 years of his life turned out to be incessant moral and physical torture for Alexander. But he himself was already so depressed that he did not feel it and did not even feel the threat hanging over him. He continued to work, tried to provide his family with everything they needed, but he became increasingly irritated and discontented with his wife, who now not only beat him every day, but also invented more and more sophisticated abuse. Now the young man was forbidden to sleep on the matrimonial bed, and instead he was confined to the floor on the bedside mat without a blanket or pillow like a dog. He was also forbidden to enter the kitchen, and he could only eat what his wife and children did not finish. In fact, Alexander was starving because he could not buy anything outside the house because Jordan took away all his money. In addition, the woman deprived her husband of sleep and rest, having invented a new entertainment for herself. As soon as he fell asleep, she would beat him on the head, cut him, or pour boiling water on him. She'll later recalled waking up each time in savage pain, bloody or burned. After that, he would go to treat and bandage his wounds with improvised means, and his wife would go to bed quietly. Alexander perceived what was happening as something ordinary. He was finally broken morally and did not try to resist. The man completely stopped communicating with his parents and brother, and his wife on his behalf regularly asked them for money, also financially helped them her parents so that the young woman could not deny herself anything. Sheely lost a lot of weight and weighed already less than 50 pounds. In addition, his body was constantly covered with wounds, abrasions, burns, and hematomas, which could not but cause questions from others. At work, the guy was urged to go to the hospital, so his wife forced him to quit for fear of exposure. After the dismissal, he finally became a hostage of Jordan, who now abused him day and night. Long-awaited deliverance. Despite the horror that was going on in the couple's home, those around them still thought they were a happy family. Worth maintained social media pages on behalf of her husband, where she regularly posted old photos of them and their children, accompanied by captions about how in love they were and how lucky they were to have met each other. No one could even think that a woman with angelic looks and mother of 2 children behind closed doors turns into a real sophisticated monster. She knocked out her husband's teeth, made a long and deep cut on his arm with a knife. His body did not come off the burns, but at the same time, he could not go to the hospital. and at home from improvised means he had only food film and tape, which he used to pull the wounds. Neighbors periodically heard screams coming from the house of the couple, and sometimes they were so disturbing that concerned people called the police. But Jordan each time managed to send away the law enforcers, convincing them that she and her husband were fine. However, during the next visit of the squad called by neighbors, one of the police officers noticed a man clutching a fresh wound and blood running down his arm. In addition, he looked emaciated and had bruises of varying degrees on his face. The girl tried to convince the officer that her husband was mentally unstable and sometimes self-mutilated. But this time, the police called the paramedics and Alex was sent to the hospital. The doctors were literally shocked at the condition in which the young man was admitted. There was virtually no life on him, and his arm was so badly damaged that he was in danger of amputation. Alexander's body was covered with second and third degree burns. He weighed only 94 pounds. The ligaments of his shoulder were damaged from blows inflicted with a screwdriver, and there was a deep cut on his forearm, not counting the knocked-out teeth and numerous hematomas. At that time, Jordan burst into the hospital demanding that her husband be handed over to her and assuring her that nothing terrible had happened to him and that he had done all the damage to himself. However, no one believed the distraught woman, and it was decided to take her to the station for questioning. Fair punishment. At first, Worth denied everything and stuck to the original version that her husband was self-harming. But when Alexander's parents arrived at the station, having visited their son in the hospital, the woman changed her face and began to describe in detail all the things she had done to her husband. She said she had trained him like a dog, and he wouldn't get away from her. At the same time, Jordan insisted that her husband provoked her to be violent because he was allegedly cheating on her and pissing her off on purpose. She also continued to claim that he was mentally ill and had a tendency to self-injure. Naturally, all these testimonies categorically refuted the parents of the guy, but he himself did not immediately decide to testify against his wife. Only after undergoing a course of treatment and working with a psychologist, Alexander finally dared to talk about all the horrors that he had experienced in his own home in recent years. However, Worth was sure that she would face at most an administrative penalty, so she was not too worried about the upcoming trial. After hearing all the testimony, the judge found 22-year-old Worth guilty of willful infliction of grievous bodily harm, moral and physical abuse, and coercive control. She was sentenced to 7.5 years in prison. Even having 2 young children was not a mitigating factor for the sadist. Jordan was shocked by this sentence, and the case itself was unprecedented for the UK. The children were left in the care of their father and grandparents while their mother served her sentence. Alexander, having fully recovered from years of torture, became involved in community work and is now actively helping victims of domestic violence himself. On July 4, 2023, Jordan, having served 5 years of her 7.5-year sentence, was released on parole. However, the woman is forbidden to approach her former spouse and see their joint children. She is reportedly engaged to a bricklayer named Adam Steth and is preparing to become a mother for the 3rd time. In 1984, sisters Lily and Wileen Kennedy shared a small blue and white house in the Heights neighborhood of Houston, Texas. Wileen, 33, was an interior decorator specializing in stained glass decor and also dealt in vintage clothing and antique jewelry. Her younger sister Lily, 23, had recently moved in after a bitter divorce, seeking refuge from her ex-husband and choosing to keep her location a secret. Previously employed as a data processor, Lily was unemployed at the time. On the morning of March 5th, just days after Lily had moved in, their father, Jack, waited for the sisters to pick him up for an 8 a.m. doctor's appointment. When they hadn't arrived by 8:30, he became concerned and decided to walk over to their house. Upon reaching their home on East 12th Street, he found the door slightly ajar. Stepping inside, Jack made a horrifying discovery. His daughter's bodies lay on the living room floor, head to foot in a row. Lily had been shot once in the head, while Wileen had been raped and stabbed 4 times in the neck. This led investigators to believe Wileen was the killer's intended target. The scene suggested the crime was not a random act of violence. There were no signs of forced entry, and aside from Lily's wallet, nothing appeared to have been stolen. Wileen's wallet, containing several $100s, and her jewelry inventory were untouched, adding to the mystery surrounding the brutal murders. The house had been ransacked as though the killer had been looking for something. Police found unknown shoe prints at the scene, but no fingerprints that could lead them to a suspect. A neighbor reported to the police that she had been awoken at 6 a.m. by two loud noises that may have been gunshots. Shortly after 6 a.m., another man who lived in the area was getting ready to leave for work when he saw a man walking down the street carrying a bundle made out of a quilt. He confronted the man, thinking that he might be a burglar. The man claimed that he had just gotten into a fight with his girlfriend and he had just gotten kicked out of the house. He had hastily shoved his belongings into the quilt on the way out. The neighbor accepted the story, and the man walked off. The neighbor met with a sketch artist and helped develop a composite image of the man he had seen. Given the fact that Lily's divorce had just been finalized the Friday before she died, and she was afraid of her ex-husband, he seemed like a viable suspect. However, at the time of the murders, he had been in the hospital recovering from back surgery. Aleena also had been threatened by an on-again, off-again boyfriend, but he passed a polygraph and was not identified by the neighbor, who had seen the man near the crime scene in a lineup. He was eventually cleared as a suspect. The case eventually went cold. In 2009, the Houston Police Department Homicide Division's Cold Case Unit re-examined the evidence from the case, hoping that modern technology would provide a lead. From Eileen's rape kit, they were able to develop a DNA profile. Unfortunately, there was no match to the profile in Cody's, so police were still unable to identify the killer. In 2014, Houston Police Sergeant Paul Nodard received a phone call from a defense attorney who told him that he had a client with information about the murder. The informant was in prison in Indiana at the time and refused to give his information over the phone, so Nodard traveled to Indiana to meet with him. According to informant, shortly after Wileen and Lily's murders, a friend had shown up at his home in an agitated state, going on about two sisters and how hard it was to kill someone. He pulled a bundle made up in a quilt, like the one the witness had seen a man carrying near the scene of the crime, out of his car. The man then smashed a gun with a hammer in the informant's yard and started a fire, in which he threw a woman's wallet, a knife, and other items. The informant went with the man as he buried the remnants from the fire and the quilt in a drainage ditch. The man who had come to the informant's home that day was named Edmund Beauregard Deegan. Deegan had a criminal record, mainly consisting of aggravated robbery, and still lived in Houston area. Outside of the times he had spent in state prison, it was largely unclear how he spent the 30 years since the murders, as he mainly worked odd jobs in construction that did not leave an employment record. Pictures of him from 1984 closely resemble the sketch of the strange man seen near the crime scene the morning of the murders. Deegan met with Sergeant Nodard and admitted to knowing Wileen Kennedy. He had a wholesale used clothing business in the early 80s and had crossed paths with her in connection with her own clothing business. He said that he had last seen her a week before her death. He denied ever having any sort of sexual relationship with her. He voluntarily provided a DNA sample, which turned out to be a match to the profile extracted from Eileen's rape kit. On January 14, 2015, more than 30 years after the Kennedy sisters were killed, Deegan was arrested and charged with capital murder. Prosecutors were concerned about going to trial, however, even with the DNA evidence. They did not have physical evidence tying Deegan to Lily's murder and feared that trying him for both murders together would create reasonable doubt. They decided to offer him a plea deal in which he would only have to plead guilty to Eileen's murder. On February 20, 2017, Deegan pled guilty to Eileen's murder and received a sentence of 15 years. While this seems like a short sentence for such a serious crime, the actual time Deegan will spend in prison will in fact be even shorter. Under a Texas mandatory release law that applies to anyone convicted of murder that occurred between 1977 and 1987, Deegan will automatically be released from prison in 2024 instead of 2030. Since he had remained in custody since his arrest in 2015, he was eligible for parole just 5 months after his sentencing. Lily and Wileen's niece, Jackie Elliot, launched a media campaign urging members of the community to write to the parole board, discouraging Deegan's release. He was not granted parole and remains incarcerated. Timothy Coggins was a fun-loving and outgoing 23-year-old in 1983. He was known to be a good dancer, and he was very close with his 5 siblings. He could strike up a conversation with almost anyone he met. He was last seen alive on the night of October 7th when he went out dancing at the People's Choice Club in Griffin, Georgia. On October 9th, hunters discovered Timothy's disfigured body, discarded near some power lines, in the nearby town of Sunnyside. Timothy had been stabbed 30 times and dragged down the rural dirt road behind a vehicle. His injuries were so extensive that police could not identify him based on his appearance, and his family had to give him a closed casket funeral. The overkill involved in his murder led to fears that Timothy's death was meant to send a message. Tim had recently begun dating a white woman and had reportedly been socializing with another white woman at the People's Choice Club the night he was last seen. These were still dangerous things for a black man like Tim to do in that area of suburban Georgia at the time. Something his ride to the Tim's case was not a high priority to Sheriff James Freeman. Tim's case was not a high priority to Sheriff James Freeman, and resources were quickly diverted to more trivial crimes like vandalism and stolen mailboxes. Clint Phillips, who was the lead investigator on the case in 1983, described these attitudes and actions in court under oath in 2018. Tim's case had gone cold almost immediately, and Phillips had to close it after just a few months. Over half of the evidence collected at the scene would eventually disappear. It would be 34 years and 4 days before any arrest was made in Tim's case. On October 13, 2017, 5 people were arrested in connection to the case. Bill Moore Sr., 58, and Frankie Gebhardt, 59, were charged with murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, aggravated battery, and concealing a death. Gregory Huffman, 47, was charged with obstruction and violation of oath of office. Lamar Bunn, 32, and Sandra Bunn, 58, were both charged with obstruction. Moore and Gebhardt were brothers-in-law, and Sandra Bunn was Gebhardt's sister. Lamar Bunn was Sandra's son and Gebhardt's nephew. Moore and Gebhardt were the only 2 individuals charged with crimes directly tied to Tim's death. The other 3 individuals were accused of crimes committed long after the murder, carried out to help cover it up. Lamar Bunn was a part-time police officer who previously worked for the Lamar County Sheriff's Office and who, according to his arrest warrant, instructed Gebhardt on how to prevent having his DNA collected and met with other members of law enforcement in an attempt to prevent the collection of evidence in the case. Sandy Bunn was alleged to have instructed her brother on how to obstruct and prevent the collection of evidence. Gregory Huffman was a Spalding County Sheriff's Office detention officer accused of revealing the name of a confidential informant being used against Gebhardt. Following their arrests, Lamar Bunn was placed on unpaid administrative leave pending an investigation, and Huffman was fired. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation had reopened the case based on reports that Gebhardt, who was the one potential suspect identified in 1983, was bragging about the murder in prison. He was boasting to other inmates about how he and his brother-in-law had protected the white race from black people by killing a black man, although he exclusively used a racial slur that will not be repeated here to describe him. Gabbard has numerous white supremacist symbols tattooed on his body and was an outspoken supporter of a Jim Crow-era law that limited the rights of African Americans that the local government was trying to have taken off the books in the early 1980s. The white woman Tim had been socializing with on the night of October 7th, 1983 turned out to be Gebhardt's girlfriend. The report of Gebhardt's statements in prison prompted GBI agents to re-interview witnesses, many of whom said that they had been threatened into silence by Gebhardt in 1983. The renewed interest in the case in turn spurred even more eyewitnesses to come forward, and over 60 people were eventually interviewed by authorities. Gebhardt had apparently been very proud of his crime, and his involvement in the murder was apparently common knowledge, although fear of Gebhardt and his threats of violence kept the community quiet. One of the witnesses had been just 10 years old when he heard Gebhardt describe the gruesome crime in detail. Physical evidence, including a chain, a knife, and a shoe, was found thrown inside a well on Gebhardt's property. On June 26, 2018, a Spalding County jury found Frankie Gebhardt guilty of malice murder, felony murder, aggravated battery, aggravated assault, and concealing the death of another. He was sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years. Bill Moore was to go to trial later in 2018 on the exact same charges. But after Gippard's conviction, he agreed to a plea deal. The Coggins family was consulted about the deal and agreed to its terms. On August 16th, Moore pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter and concealing the death of another. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison plus 10 years of probation and will be eligible for parole. Judge Fletcher Sams placed an additional condition on the plea deal, barring Moore from ever returning to Spalding County or any of its surrounding counties should he ever be released from prison. Tim's niece Heather, who had been just 6 years old when her uncle died, told CNN that she was close enough to Moore in the courtroom to speak to him at his sentencing. "I told him that what he did to our family 35 years ago tore our family apart," she said. "Our grandmother went to her grave not knowing what happened to her son. I said, we forgive you. I hope that whoever you pray to, you ask for forgiveness and are forgiven. I also hope that you spend the rest of your natural life behind bars." Marcia Carter moved from Canton, Ohio to California with her husband and 3 sons in 1979. Within a few years, however, she and her husband divorced. By 1983, 25-year-old Marcia was in the city of Richmond and had a 4th child, a son she did not share with her ex-husband. The single mother managed to work as a purchasing agent for a manufacturing company to support her children, attend college, and sing in a rock band. Marcia's oldest sons, Dante, 11, Travis, 9, and Antoine, 7, saw their mother for the last time on the night of Tuesday, December 6th, before they went to bed. When they woke up the following morning, their mother was not in her bedroom, but a large pool of blood was. The frightened boys ran to get help from a neighbor, who came back to search the apartment. The boys' baby brother Andre, who was just days away from his 1st birthday, had been hidden under the bed, unharmed. 10 days later, Marcia's 1975 Mercury Monarch was found in the parking lot of a hotel in West Sacramento. Her body was inside of the car's trunk. She had been stabbed to death. Marcia's case went cold but was reopened in 2008. Blood evidence found on a piece of Marcia's clothing left behind in her bedroom was sent to the Contra Costa County Crime Lab, but there was a severe backlog of evidence that needed to be processed at the lab, so the samples from Marcia's case were not tested until 2016. When they were finally tested, they revealed a blood DNA profile belonging to the man Marcia's sons had always believed killed their mother. In September 2016, Cheryl L. Smothers was arrested and charged with Marcia's murder. Smothers and Marcia had previously dated. According to Marcia's sons, he did not take the end of their relationship well, and leading up to the murder, he had been waging a campaign of harassment against the family. He would smash windows at their apartment and make threatening phone calls. He would show up at the apartment, and Marcia would have to tell him to leave them alone and slam the door in his face. Marcia warned her sons to run if Smothers ever got close to them. When he was arrested, Smothers was confined to a wheelchair. He had been driving in a Corvette in 1988 when he was rear-ended by a drunk driver. He was hit with enough force to flip his car and was left partially paralyzed. He filed a lawsuit against General Motors after the accident and was awarded $6,100,000. He used some of this money to post his $1 million bail and remained out of custody while awaiting his trial. In addition to the blood evidence found in Marcia's bedroom, Contra Costa County prosecutors also had a witness who ultimately testified at trial that Smothers had tried to hire him to kill Marcia for $500 in 1983. He had recorded some of these conversations. Smothers had shown the witness a map of and pointed at locations where Marcia's body could be dumped. One of those locations was the hotel where Marcia's body was eventually located. By the time this man came forward, he was suffering from stage 4 lung cancer. He apologized to Marcia's sons for failing to come forward sooner. At the end of Smothers' trial, it took the jury only 3 hours of deliberation to reach a verdict. The reading of the verdict was delayed when Smothers failed to appear in court to hear it. A bench warrant was issued and he was arrested and brought to court so that the verdict could be read. He was found guilty. After Marcia's death, her 3 oldest sons had gone to live in Oakland with their father. When he had difficulty supporting them financially, They were sent back to Ohio to live with family members. They spoke at Smothers' sentencing about the impact their mother's death had on their lives. "We definitely wanted to say our piece to the court, how this affected us, the negative residual effects that have happened," Travis Carter told the court. "We're all doing much better now. We've become very successful individuals and businessmen. But it wasn't without a lot of pain, a lot of tears, poverty growing up, a lot of things that you don't want your kids to go through." Marsha's sons grew up sharing her love of music. They say it helped them cope with her loss, and Dante grew up to be a rapper. During his statement at Smothers' sentencing, Travis Carter also attributed their ability to handle Marsha's death to their faith. "We believe that we'll see her again," he said. "That's the positive part we take of our faith." Jordan relentlessly pursued Zara for nearly half a mile, embodying persistence and malevolence. Unaware of the looming danger, Zara continued her path, oblivious to the predator closing in. Emerging from the darkness like a ghost, Jordan seized her by the neck with one hand while covering her mouth with the other, silencing her screams and obstructing her breath. He dragged her into the forest's shadowy thicket, a forgotten corner where darkness and cruelty awaited. There, Zara's world turned into a living nightmare. Jordan brutally violated her body and soul, leaving her cries of pain and horror to dissolve into the merciless night. Despite her desperate resistance, her pleas went unheard, swallowed by the surrounding void. The horrifying assault spanned 9 agonizing minutes, an eternity for Zara, who was consumed by terror and hopelessness. When it was over, Jordan returned to his home, leaving behind a shattered life and an unrelenting nightmare. Yet, what if this was only the prologue to a deeper, darker story? What if the hidden truths of that terrible night unveiled an even more intricate and sinister reality? Secrets buried in the shadows of the past have the power to unravel lives and obliterate the remnants of hope and peace. Only by delving into the depths of these mysteries can answers be unearthed. Yet those answers may only lead to more unsettling questions. Zara Aleena's story began in the winter of 1986, amidst the vast landscapes of Great Britain. She was the eldest of 5 children, born to a single mother who carried a history of resilience. In 1968, her mother had mysteriously left the slums of Pakistan to carve a new life in this corner of the UK, bringing with her untold secrets that might hold the key to understanding the darkness that eventually found Zara. Zara embodied the hopes and dreams of her parents, and her birth was an important event. She was the first granddaughter of Radha Parvin, and it brought her a special status in her community. From early childhood, Zara was surrounded by relatives who raised her to a pedestal, showering her with tenderness and care. She grew up surrounded by numerous generations, studying at a unique school of life where the rules were written in blood and betrayal. Despite their lack of finances, Zara's parents invested everything in their daughter's education, believing that she would be able to find everything she needed for a successful life. Their dreams were strong. Their hopes were stronger. But in this world of dark streets and hidden ambitions, Zara's life was in danger, hanging over her like a dark cloud. From early childhood, the fire of passion and hunger for life burned in Zara's heart. She dived into the world of tap dancing, where every movement, like a note in a symphony of passion, gave birth to beauty and harmony. Swimming was another passion of her soul, allowing her to escape from the gray everyday life and feel the wave of freedom. She always dressed exquisitely, as if creating a work of art from herself, embodying her dreams in every outfit. But that was just the beginning. When she skated for the first time, she felt new breath of freedom in her soul. Skating became not just a hobby for her, but a way of breathing, a way of expressing the deepest essence of her soul. Among those who knew Zara, no one was surprised to hear that she dreamed of becoming a lawyer. Her heart was full of desire to protect and help others because she was that bright ray of hope in a world full of evil. Her friendly nature sparkled with joy which was contagious like a fire in the dark. Her gaze and sparkling eyes promised miracles, and her black curly hair seemed to have been created to tempt fate. Her image was full of charm, like a magic potion mixing passion, kindness, and courage in an extraordinary cocktail of attractiveness. Already in her teens, she had the opportunity to travel around England and visit museums and galleries. She showed big interest in art and culture. These trips became an indicator of how independent she was. Later, trips to the rest of Europe followed. This was a clear confirmation that she inherited the desire for adventure from her relatives. It seems she was following in the footsteps of her Aunt Farah, who, unlike the rest of the family, chose Portugal over the UK. It was fascinating for a young woman to see the work of her aunt, who worked as a psychotherapist in women's organizations. Zara visited her several times. After graduating from high school, her aspirations began to be realized when she got in the University of Westminster. Since then, she worked hard to achieve her goals while taking care of her mother and grandmother at the same time. Her tiny figure was full of a passionate soul and unstoppable energy. Her sense of justice and equality was not limited to the walls of the lecture hall. On the contrary, the generous and caring Zara supported refugees fleeing violence and sought to give a voice to those who had less power. She also participated in volunteer work in community canteens to help the homeless. In general, she had a special habit of noticing the needs of others and always including them in her schedule. Zara was an easygoing girl. Her Aunt Smyra lived nearby, and she often visited her several times a week. While preparing for the exams, she asked her aunt to help her to study, but they always ended up laughing. Zara left a trail of joy behind her everywhere she went, as those who knew her at that time claimed. In addition, she was hardworking, covered all her expenses, and helped her family. She worked at a local clothing store and knew everyone in the area from teenagers to the elderly. She always greeted everyone with kindness and was willing to help if necessary. The young girl could talk for hours, but it did not affect her ability to listen carefully to others. Her generosity extended to all living creatures, and she especially loved cats. Sometimes she spent her own money to take stray cats to the vet, take care of them at home, or persuade neighbors to take them in. Her friend Sanji Naira described her as radiant and believed that her main gift was the ability to share optimism. When Sanji was in a bad mood, he turned to her for help. In Zara's life, there was a bright star whose name was engraved in the very depths of her heart: Carissa Peters. They were not just friends, but companions in the struggle for justice, for protection of women from violence and abuse. Their shared hobbies, especially in the field of women's rights, and it was the connecting thread that carried their friendship through difficulties and trials. Zara and Carissa were so close that they seemed to share the same soul. They easily entered each other's house as if they were their own shelters from the storms of the world, or talked on the phone almost every day discussing the news, their thoughts, and plans for the future. In 2002, after successfully passing the exams and completing her internship in law field, Zara had the opportunity to work in the Crown Prosecution Service. It was an important step and an integral part of her dream to become a full-fledged lawyer. To do this, she worked tirelessly even when her studies were interrupted by worries about her mother and grandmother as well as financial difficulties. This step was important not only for her but also for Carissa and for those who believed in her, who support her on this stormy journey to a bright future. On her first day at her new job, Zara couldn't help but be happy. She sent a smiley selfie to her friends and family, as if announcing to the whole world her new era of life. It wasn't just a new job. It was the last piece in the mosaic of her dreams. She had been coming to this for so long that she could hardly believe in her own happiness. Working as an administrator might seem a secondary post, but for Zara, it was a giant step towards her goal. At the age of 35, she realized that a new stage in her life was beginning, and this made her heart beat with extraordinary force. It wasn't just a working day. It was the beginning of a new era, an era when she felt fulfilled and happy. The new job strengthened her confidence in the fact that it was time to create her own family. She dreamed of her children, how they would be happy and protected, how they would live in a world filled with love and harmony. At that moment, Zara realized that every new day was a step towards her happiness, a step towards her dream of having her own family. With such an active life between work, volunteering, friends, and the attentive care of her mother and grandmother with whom she lived in a separate room when necessary, Zara loved to walk. She liked to move freely. She didn't bother with small things. She could easily put a pair of shoes in her bag to change them for sneakers when needed. Zara believed that a woman should be able to move freely without any obstacles, and even more so that no one should have deprived them of this right. But near her house, there was a man whose existence completely took away this woman's right. His name was Jordan McSweeney. He was a few years younger than Zara, and it was unknown where he was from. One Saturday evening, when the sun had already set below the horizon, Zara was going to meet a friend. Even though she was not in the mood, she decided not to cancel the meeting. Zara's word was as strong as steel, and she always stuck to her promises, not allowing her mood to dictate her actions. Her devotion was as steady as a rock, and she was ready to walk through thick and thin for the sake of her friends. Before leaving, Zara picked up the phone to talk to Aunt Farah, but this time there was a certain anxiety in her voice that did not go unnoticed. Her aunt asked her to be careful, and Zara realized that even if she wasn't going to go far from home, the world around her seemed strange and unpredictable that evening. But she stubbornly told herself that she knew every dark corner of the city, and her name was known to everyone who had ever looked at her. But something about this evening made her heart beat faster, and Zara decided to be more careful. At the appointed time, she met her friend at a local bar called the Ilford Big Spoon, located on the West End of London. Ilford is a lively and diverse London area, an ideal place for dinner and gatherings, so the girls visited this place that Saturday evening. Then they went to another bar, and there Zara drank a couple glasses of water. At the same time, Jordan was having one drink after another at another nearby nightclub. An idea was forming in his mind, and he refused to resist it. He intended to find a woman to attack that evening. Surveillance cameras recorded how Jordan met women at the entrance to the club, hugged them without their consent, and tried to kiss them. He was particularly persistent with one of the employees, despite her obvious reluctance. He was kicked out of the club a little after 23 o'clock, and his inappropriate behavior remained recorded on cameras. When he came out, his actions were recorded by cameras as he walked along Romford Street towards the park. Seeing the woman walking, Jordan followed her and approached her closely. Although she tried to avoid him by entering the store, he was waiting for her outside. When the woman cautiously left, Jordan followed her again. Then he walked down the other side of the street, leaving her in sight. However, when the woman entered her house, Jordan had no choice but to continue on his way. According to the surveillance camera's data, at about 2 a.m. on Cranbrook Street, Jordan noticed a woman approaching him. Suddenly, he quickened his pace, approaching her. But on the video, you can see that two passing witnesses noticed Jordan's strange actions. Despite the man's suspicious behavior, the woman returned home safely, leaving Jordan surprised and annoyed. He returned to Cranbrook Street without success. At this time, Zara and her friend, deciding to return home, left the bar when it was 2 a.m. A friend took a taxi, preferring convenience, while Zara, given the short distance and good weather, decided to walk. They parted, and Zara headed down the residential street of Cranbrook, which is a 10-minute walk from her house. That's when Jordan noticed her. According to the Chief Inspector Dave Williams, Jordan had a clear intention. He was going to attack a woman that night regardless of the location. Cranbrook Street remained busy even in the early morning hours. There was a constant flow of traffic. At the age of 13, Jordan had already been sentenced in Kent Juvenile Court for various offenses committed between 2006 and 2009. In August 2010, when he was 17 years old, he was found guilty of assaulting a girl, leaving her with a swollen eye, and he was given a 4-month detention and correction period. 11 years later, he attacked another woman, and he was again banned from approaching a woman, this time for 3 years. During this time, he had no right to contact her directly or indirectly. By 2010, Jordan had 28 convictions for 69 crimes, including theft, assaults on police and the public, criminal cases, theft of motor vehicles, traffic violations, committing crimes with bail, and shoplifting. On his page on a well-known social network, he bragged about having a huge collection of weapons and in general extolled a criminal lifestyle to the sky, posting different photos and quotes. He also posted fake pictures saying that the FBI was looking for him. On June 17, 2022, he was released on parole after being sentenced to prison for criminal damage, racially aggravated harassment, and illegal carrying of a bladed weapon. One of the conditions was meetings with a parole officer. Jordan settled into a van on St. Valentine Street in a 130-acre park in the south of Gun Hill, the largest green space in London's Red Bridge district. He again violated all agreements and, true to his criminal background, missed not one but two meetings with a parole officer. As a result, the authorities refused to give him the advantage. The parole service began the procedure for returning him to prison on June 22, 2022, but they did not immediately inform the police, but only 2 days later. Early on Saturday morning, June 25th, police visited Jordan's mother's house to arrest him and found an unpleasant surprise. He was not there. Around 2:30 a.m. on June 26, 2022, the streets of Ilford witnessed a terrible crime. Zara was found on the sidewalk with signs of abuse on her body. Her belongings were scattered as if the mess in her life was embodied in the streets. Her body was bruised, her clothes were torn, and her eyes showed struggle for survival. A woman passing by immediately realized that the situation was extremely serious. Without hesitation, she began to give Zara a closed chest massage and do CPR, trying to give her the last hope of survival. But the injuries inflicted on her body turned out to be too serious. Even with all the help of passers-by and emergency medical help, it was too late. Zara fought for her life, but the severe wounds and brutality of the crime were too strong. At 9:58 a.m. on Sunday, she passed away, leaving only the painful traces of a struggle behind. At that time, at about 11 a.m. in the park, Jordan, recorded by security cameras, was getting rid of evidence, throwing out his clothes. With his indifferent and cold-blooded demeanor, it became clear that this was not a random act of violence. The police responded quickly and knocked on Zara's grandmother's door, asking her to identify her granddaughter from the bar's video footage. When she confirmed that it was her, the police finally explained to her what had happened. Zara's uncle, Aleena, called the rest of the family, including Aunt Farah, to tell them what had happened. In Portugal, her aunt, crying, remembered the call on Saturday night. After she broke the news to her children, Farah immediately flew to London. The family was in shock, trembling with horror. It was difficult for all of them to eat, sleep, or talk. Although they hardly dared to mention Zara's death, they also could not think of anything else. Meanwhile, detectives immediately began investigating the area where Zara was found. One of the first steps was to collect video footage from surveillance cameras to track the attacker's movements. This, along with the bloody fingerprints left near the scene, allowed them to identify Jordan. They then tracked his location using a video surveillance system. After receiving images of the main suspect, Inspector Dave sent an officer to Gun Hill to check if anyone else recognized Jordan. The operation was successful, and almost immediately they found Jordan sleeping in his van. The authorities immediately arrested him. Confused and stunned, Jordan had no resistance during the arrest. Clothes and shoes stained with blood were found in his trailer, which Jordan was trying to get rid of. Despite many hours of interrogation, Jordan remained silent, refusing to reveal his name or give details of his life. At the same time, new video footage continued to appear, allowing police to reconstruct the chronology of events. The crime led parole officer Justin Russell to highlight a number of errors in the treatment of Jordan. It was noted that Jordan had been a criminal since the age of 16, both in and out of prison, which made him a high-risk criminal. He had been a high-risk criminal since the age of 16, but it turned out that he had not been treated appropriately. They should have taken more urgent measures to return him to prison after he missed scheduled supervision appointments upon release from detention, but they didn't do it. On Wednesday, June 29th, through a press release read by the police, Zara's family expressed how shocking the last few days have been. Logically, for them, it was an irreparable loss. Nevertheless, they stressed that the warmth and kindness shown by people were valuable to them and served as evidence of the strength of their beloved Zara's spirit. The family had a lot to do, and they needed to find strength. Aunt Farah communicated with the media and met with the police. Despite the shock and grief, her family, especially her aunt, taking into account her own experience in this field, knew that it was necessary to control the situation and protect Zara from accusations from certain media. On July 1st, 2022, a preliminary hearing was held in the Jordan case. And on September 30th the same year, A date was set for a hearing to prepare testimony in the trial. However, on the day of the scheduled trial, Jordan did not show up due to a positive test for COVID-19, and the hearing had to be postponed. On Saturday, July 2nd, a memorial service was held in memory of Zara, organized by her family, which took place on the way to her home, symbolizing the last journey that never ended. At this service, many of those present were dressed in white, symbolizing a silent walk. The event was attended by a coalition of more than 120 organizations specializing in supporting women, expressing solidarity in the fight against violence. It was one of the many groups that worked with Zara Aleena's family. As they stated in the media, they demanded justice and taking responsibility. Additionally, they asked to focus on what they considered a priority and key issue, to resist violence from men and to stop the acts of violators. At a preliminary hearing before the investigation at the East London court in Walthamstow, crime scene investigator Nadia Persut said she believes there is reason that local police officers could and should have taken more action to find Jordan before his attack on Zara. Consequently, she expressed the opinion that jury should resolve this issue. In addition, this investigation should have included the actions of the staff of corrections facilities for corrections facilities for probationers. According to Nadia, this process was supposed to last a month. On November 16, 2022, Jordan also did not appear at the hearing despite being told that this was mandatory. Thus, the meeting was organized via video call. This time, he pleaded guilty. Prosecutor Oliver Glasgow then described him as extremely unfit candidate for bail. This opinion was also supported by Judge Chima Grove. As for the verdict, the judge postponed it until December 14th the same year. Approaching this date, Jordan again refused to appear in court. But even this did not prevent Jordan from being sentenced to life in prison with a minimum sentence of 33 years in prison for the murder of Zara Aleena. The accused and his representatives filed an appeal, and the sentence was reduced to 33 years in prison. The judge stated that the fact that Zara was unconscious, did not feel anything, and did not suffer reduced his sentence. Just 4 months later, it became known that Jordan had an intimate relationship with a woman who worked at the Belmar Correctional Service in South London, but was not a direct employee of the prison services. The Metropolitan Police later announced that a 32-year-old woman, whose identity was not disclosed, had been arrested and was under investigation on suspicion of misconduct in a public office. As for Zara Aleena's family, everyone remembers Zara with love and pride. They still miss her. For her part, Aunt Farah continues to speak out against violence against women and girls. In March 2023, she joined a march organized by various groups seeking to draw attention to the issue and raise awareness. The protesters marched through the commercial district of West London to Trafalgar Square. Among various slogans, they stated that the lack of action against male violence is equal to abuse by the state. The tragic loss of Zara Aleena has only added dark shades to this bloody picture of violence that consumes the hearts and minds of those who seek to change the world. The case of Lori Sars, a pregnant woman whose body was discovered in a city landfill, underscores how even the smallest deception can spiral into devastating consequences. Lies often have motives, whether to evade punishment, gain an advantage, or maintain appearances. Sometimes, they are told to protect confidentiality or spare someone's feelings. For Lori Sars, however, a seemingly minor lie initiated a chain of events that ended in a heartbreaking tragedy. Her mysterious disappearance in 2004 sent shockwaves through Salt Lake City and drew nationwide attention. Her husband, Mark Hacking, reported her missing, prompting an intense search effort that captivated the country. But as the investigation unfolded, the harrowing truth behind Lori's disappearance emerged. Mark's web of lies, rooted in childhood trauma and a fear of failure, unraveled under scrutiny. The case became a media sensation, covered extensively in television programs and dramatized in films, spotlighting the destructive power of dishonesty and its ripple effects on loved ones. Lori Sars, later known as Lori Hacking, was born on December 31st in 1970, in Fullerton, California. Her story began in the most unlikely of places, a children's orphanage, where she was placed immediately after birth, with no trace of her biological parents. At the age of 2, her life took a hopeful turn when she was adopted by Thelma and Geraldo Suarez, a deeply religious couple. Geraldo, originally from the vibrant city of São Paulo, Brazil, had settled in Fullerton to teach Portuguese and English at Sunny Hills High School. The tragic circumstances of Lori's life and untimely death highlight the far-reaching impact of lies, not only on the individuals who tell them but also on those who are drawn into their consequences. Her story serves as a stark reminder of how deception can unravel lives and destroy trust, leaving heartbreak in its wake. It was amidst the bustling streets of Rio de Janeiro in the early 70s where he crossed paths with Thelma. Their shared mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints cemented their bond, leading to a union in matrimony. Despite their devotion, biological children eluded them, but their hearts remained open to the blessings of adoption. Their journey brought them to Fullerton in the late 70s, where they embraced parenthood with open arms, welcoming Lori into their lives. In 1987, another addition, a son named Paul, completed their family. However, life's journey took an unexpected turn, leading the couple down separate paths, and the adopted children found solace under Thelma's care. Relocating to the tranquil town of Orem, Utah, mother and children forged ahead. Lori and Paul flourished, traversing the halls of local high schools and later venturing into the realms of higher education. Lori in particular blossomed into a compassionate, spirited young woman, her warmth and kindness touching the lives of all who crossed her path. Amidst the tapestry of her upbringing, Lori found love for the first time at the age of 19, a chapter in her life marked by the gentle whispers of romance and the promise of a future yet to unfold. Lori's path, intertwined with that of her future husband, Mark Douglas Hacking. Born in April 1976 in the heart of North Carolina, Mark hailed from a lineage of esteemed medical professionals. As the youngest of 3 sons in the illustrious Hacking family, Mark inherited a legacy of excellence. His father, Douglas Hacking, stood as a prominent pediatrician, while his mother, Aleena, contributed her expertise as a nurse. Mark's older brothers, Scotty and Lance, carved their own paths of success in the realm of science. Mark exuded an aura of determination and ambition, mirroring the aspirations of his esteemed kin. With dreams of pursuing a medical career akin to his family members, Mark radiated care and attentiveness, embodying the essence of a devoted family man. It was under the serendipitous veil of fate that Lori crossed paths with Mark, and from that moment their bond remained unbroken. After 5 years of nurturing their romance, the couple took the leap into matrimony, forging a life together within the quaint confines of Salt Lake City, Utah. By then, Lori had already flourished in her career, ascending to the role of senior assistant manager in a prestigious company, while Mark, with honors adorning his academic journey, embarked on his medical odyssey at the University of Utah. Amidst their shared joy, the couple reveled in the anticipation of impending parenthood, with Lori's pregnancy casting a radiant glow upon their lives. Plans for a new chapter unfurled as they prepared to relocate to North Carolina, where Mark would pursue his medical residency and Lori her professional endeavors. Theirs was a tapestry of promise and potential, woven with dreams of a blissful future. Yet fate's cruel hand intervened on July 19, 2004, shattering their idyllic existence. Lori, 3 months pregnant, vanished without a trace, leaving behind a void of uncertainty and despair. Mark's frantic attempts to reach her on that fateful day were met with eerie silence, signaling the onset of a harrowing ordeal. As the days stretched into an agonizing abyss of unanswered questions, the mystery of Lori's disappearance veiled their once bright future in a shroud of darkness. Several hours elapsed before Mark made his way to the police station, his heart heavy with worry as he reported the inexplicable disappearance of his 27-year-old pregnant wife. According to Mark's account, Lori had ventured to a nearby park in the morning, a routine part of her pre-work exercise regimen, but failed to return home thereafter. Initially assuming she had proceeded directly to her workplace, Mark's concern deepened upon discovering Lori had left her phone behind. As he recounted the events to attentive police officers, Mark's voice trembled with apprehension. However, Protocol dictated that a formal search for a missing adult would commence only after a 24-hour period had elapsed since the disappearance. Undeterred by bureaucratic timelines, Mark resolved to initiate his search, driven by the fear that Lori may have fallen ill and required assistance. Setting out to the park where Lori had intended to visit that day, Mark's hopes were dashed upon finding her car parked at the neighborhood's periphery, yet no sign of Lori in sight. Returning home, he embarked on a relentless quest, reaching out to friends, relatives, and colleagues in a desperate bid for information. Their collective response echoed his distress, with no one having seen or heard from Lori on that fateful day. Word of Lori's disappearance quickly spread, igniting a groundswell of community concern. Before law enforcement intervened, hundreds of individuals comprising relatives, friends, acquaintances, and concerned citizens rallied to join the search effort. Together, they combed the vicinity, engaging neighbors, local vendors, and passers-by in their quest for any semblance of information while plastering the area with flyers adorned with Lori's visage, a poignant plea for her safe return. On July 20th, as the official report of Lori's disappearance emerged, the news swiftly reached the media, casting a pall of concern over Salt Lake City. In response, the relatives of the missing woman convened a press conference, their faces etched with worry, beseeching the community for assistance. Mark, Lori's husband, stood at the forefront, his anguish palpable as tears streamed down his cheeks, imploring anyone with information about his pregnant wife's whereabouts to come forward. By nightfall, a groundswell of support had materialized, with nearly 1,000 individuals joining the search effort. As police scrutinized Lori's abandoned car, a perplexing detail emerged. Despite Lori's petite stature, the driver's seat had been adjusted to accommodate someone much larger, a discrepancy too glaring to ignore. Further confounding investigators, a key revelation surfaced during a search of the Hacking residence: the discovery of the car keys, purportedly found in the park. The incongruity was glaring. How could the keys be within the home if Lori, as Mark had claimed, had departed in the car and never returned? This turn of events immediately raised suspicions about Mark. He claimed that the keys had been left in the ignition when he discovered the car, so he simply took them out and brought them home. While this explanation wasn't enough to detain him, it certainly warranted closer scrutiny from law enforcement. Soon, suspicions about his involvement in his wife's disappearance were substantiated in a most unexpected manner. Overwhelmed by grief, Mark's behavior took a bizarre turn. The day after Lori was reported missing, police received reports of Mark running naked through the city streets, his cries unintelligible. His distraught demeanor and erratic actions prompted a psychiatric evaluation, raising questions about his mental state. While many attributed his breakdown to the stress of his wife's disappearance, police speculated that it could have been a ploy to feign insanity and evade accountability. As Mark underwent psychiatric assessment, investigators obtained permission to conduct a thorough search of the couple's residence. What they discovered painted a chilling picture: traces of blood in the marital bedroom alongside remnants of stained bedding. Curiously, a new mattress, purchased on the morning of July 19th, the day Lori vanished according to Mark's account, had replaced the old one. Moreover, concealed within the closet lay a sizable kitchen knife, its blade bearing what appeared to be dried blood. But the most damning evidence awaited investigators in the living room. An envelope addressed to Mark lay conspicuously on a table containing a letter purportedly written by Lori herself. In the letter, Lori accused Mark of betraying her trust throughout their marriage, declaring their need to part ways. This revelation cast a grim shadow over the investigation, suggesting a far darker truth behind Lori's disappearance, one that hinted at betrayal and potential foul play. This revelation finally convinced law enforcement that Mark was directly implicated in his wife's disappearance. The only remaining task was to unravel the events of July 19th. A breakthrough in shedding light on the situation came from Mark's father, Douglas Hacking. According to Douglas, Mark had never graduated from the University of Utah nor become a certified psychologist. He had been expelled 2 years prior, shortly after marrying Lori. Fearful of disappointing his beloved and his family, Mark continued to masquerade as a student, fabricating assignments and defending his diploma in a parade that snowballed out of control. Mark's confession to his father made just a month before the tragedy laid bare the extent of his deceit. He attributed his actions to familial pressure, feeling compelled to match the success of his relatives in the medical field. As the sole breadwinner in their family, Lori remained oblivious to the truth, with Douglas unknowingly enabling Mark by providing financial support. When the time came for Mark to defend his diploma, Douglas arranged an interview at a medical school in North Carolina, only to discover Mark's lack of credentials. Despite Douglas's insistence that Mark come clean to Lori, he persisted in his deception, claiming acceptance to the medical school on the premise of his fictitious psychology degree. Unbeknownst to Mark, Douglas took matters into his own hands and divulged the truth to Lori's sister. Shocked by the revelation, Lori grappled with the betrayal of 2 years' worth of lies from her husband, compounded by the fact that she was carrying his child. Wrestling with her shattered trust, Lori confided in her closest friend, seeking solace and guidance in the midst of overwhelming uncertainty. On July 25th, 6 days following Lori's disappearance, Mark, confined to a psychiatric hospital, was visited by his older brothers, where he divulged a chilling confession. He had taken the life of his pregnant wife, Lore, with a .22 caliber rifle. However, he withheld specific details initially, leaving investigators to piece together the grim events that transpired in the Hacking household. During a search of the local hospital's dumpster, authorities uncovered a spring mattress, meticulously cut into pieces, stained with blood and dark hair. An expertise later confirmed to belong to Lori. Mark hinted to his brothers that he had similarly dismembered Lori's body, bagged it, and disposed of it in a dumpster. Despite exhaustive efforts, no trace of her remains surfaced, prompting a massive search of the city's landfill by police and volunteers. Amidst mounting evidence of Mark's culpability, legal complexities loomed. Though law enforcement harbored no doubts regarding his involvement, the absence of a body posed challenges. Nevertheless, on August 2nd, Mark faced formal charges of first-degree murder and obstructing an investigation, leading to his transfer to a mental health facility within the jail. A grim discovery on August 9th marked a critical breakthrough. Human remains were unearthed at the landfill, confirmed through expert examination to be Lori's. Subsequent investigations revealed a harrowing narrative. On July 18th, Lori penned a note to Mark expressing her intent to divorce him upon discovering his web of lies, fabrications about his education, aspirations, and reliance on familial support. Unwilling to accept Lori's decision, Mark resorted to an unthinkable act of violence. In the dead of night, as Lori slept, he callously ended her life with a single gunshot to the head. What followed was a calculated effort to conceal his heinous crime, orchestrating a facade of her disappearance. As legal proceedings unfolded, initial plans for seeking the death penalty underscored the gravity of Mark's actions, casting a shadow of justice over a tragic saga of deceit and destruction. For Mark, however, lingering doubts persisted regarding his awareness at the time of the crime. Subsequently, the penalty was revised to life imprisonment. Only in April 2005, under mounting evidence and legal counsel's advisement, did the accused confess to the murder. Yet, he remained unable to articulate a motive for his actions. Tearfully, he lamented Lori's significance in his life, expressing profound fear of losing her. On that fateful night, he claimed to have lost control, seized by a delirium that led him to fatally shoot his pregnant wife as she slept. Mark attributed his mental instability to familial pressures, which he perceived as relentless demands for academic excellence and unattainable standards. Following his university withdrawal, he bore the weight of shame for failing to meet these expectations, spiraling into a web of deceit from which he could not escape. Throughout court proceedings, Mark appeared in a bulletproof vest, facing incessant death threats. On June 6, 2005, the defendant was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment, eligible for parole no sooner than 2035. Despite Mark and his legal team's appeals, all attempts to overturn the verdict were fruitless. Upon hearing the verdict, the murderer himself acknowledged the prison as his rightful abode, acknowledging the impossibility of fully atoning for his actions. the consequences of his unfathomable crime reverberated, leaving irreparable scars on the lives of all involved. Lori's family made the poignant decision to erase the name Hacking from her headstone, laying her to rest under her maiden name, Suarez. For Thelma, this symbolic act served to sever ties with the man who had robbed her of her daughter and the promise of a future grandchild. A year into his incarceration, authorities discovered that Hacking was profiting from the sale of personal items, including autographs, palm prints, and even prison letterheads on an online murder auction website. Upon being interviewed, Hacking voluntarily ceased this activity and expressed remorse for his actions. Remarkably, in the years following his imprisonment, Hacking maintained correspondence with his former mother-in-law, Thelma Suarez. Despite the deep anguish of her loss, Thelma, guided by her faith, extended forgiveness to her son-in-law and endeavored to find solace amidst the enduring pain. The tragic case of Lori Suarez became the focal point of an episode in the television series Escape. It also sparked extensive discussions on various talk shows and documentary projects, including being featured as the inaugural episode of the crime television series, Lies Worth Dying For. Julia Matson lived in Clifton, New Jersey, with her husband, Edward, who had been her high school sweetheart. Together, they had 2 grown children, Guy and Eileen, as well as 3 grandsons, whom they affectionately called Mina. Over the years, Julia and Ed had opened and operated several restaurants throughout New Jersey. While Ed focused on the culinary side of the business, Julia's warm and outgoing personality made her the perfect hostess. She was always quick to help her extended family, but treasured the time spent with just her husband, children, and grandchildren. Julia drove a black Chrysler Sebring convertible, a gift from her son, Guy. She loved cruising around in it with the top down, wearing oversized Jackie O-style sunglasses and enjoying her favorite tunes, especially the music of the Beach Boys. In the summer of 2009, the Madsons were busy with celebrations. On June 19th, Julia and Ed hosted a dinner for their children and families to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary, which fell on June 20th. The following day, June 21st, was a special day as the family celebrated both Julia's 72nd birthday and Father's Day. Later that month, Julia and Ed traveled to South Seaside Park in Berkeley Township, New Jersey, to stay at their son Guy's yellow brick beach house, which was just steps from the beach. The entire family planned to spend an extended period together at the shore, celebrating Ed's 74th birthday on June 26th and then Independence Day on July 4th. Around 7 p.m. on June 21st, Julia mentioned to Ed that she was going to take a quick walk on the beach. Ed, struggling with knee issues, had difficulty walking on sand and climbing the set of wooden stairs that led over the dunes to the beach. With only one house separating their yellow beach house from the beach, Julia's walk was to be a brief one. She gave Ed a quick kiss before heading out the door, and Ed settled in to watch a Yankees game on television. Around 8:20, Ed realized that his wife was not home yet. Her walks were usually not this long, so he began looking for her, first in the backyard and then at the beach. He was able to struggle up the stairs over the dunes, thinking that Julia will be easy to spot on the beach and the pink shirt and white pants she was wearing that day. He could not see her amongst the other people still on the beach. He called out her name several times, but got no answer. He returned to the house to check to make sure that Julia had not arrived home in the time it had taken him to get to the beach and back, which was not a quick trip due to the poor shape his knees were in. Julia was not in the home or in the backyard. Ed checked with some friends who lived nearby, but they had not seen Julia. Ed then got in his car and began driving around town in case Julia had decided against taking her walk along the beach. He did not find her. At 9 o'clock, Ed called the police. Ocean County's population has the highest percentage of senior citizens out of all the counties in New Jersey, with 25% of the population falling into this category. Many people dream of retiring by the ocean, and there are dozens of retirement communities and nursing homes along the coast. Berkeley Township Police are therefore used to receiving such reports of missing seniors, and had at least one such incident per week on average. Typically, these incidents are resolved very quickly. Julia's case, however, would not be typical. The The search for Julia initially consisted of the Berkeley Township Police, her husband, and her children, but soon swelled to include hundreds of volunteers. The Ocean County Sheriff's Office, New Jersey State Police, and the Coast Guard were all also involved in the case. Volunteers passed out flyers with Julia's picture and went door to door in South Seaside Park asking for information and potential sightings of Julia. A helicopter searched the area from the air, and tracking dogs were brought in to help. In July, Texas EquiSearch joined the effort and provided use of a specialized drone to look for Julia. Boats searched the ocean and other area waterways. Homes, yards, and nearby Island Beach State Park were all searched by volunteers. No sign of Julia was found. The Matson family has spoken highly of the efforts made by law enforcement and of the thoroughness of all the volunteers who came to their aid. The diligence shown by everyone involved in the search makes the complete lack of clues in the case even more confusing. A complicating factor in Julia's disappearance was the fact that she was beginning to show signs of Alzheimer's disease. While it would be easy to blame her disappearance on the disease, several aspects of her case seem to count it as the primary reason why she remains missing. It is a part of the story of her disappearance, but not necessarily the dominant aspect of it. Julia had never gotten lost or wandered off before, and she was still well enough that she was still allowed to drive. She only had occasional problems, and no one felt that she needed to be continuously supervised. Julia's mother had suffered from dementia, and Julia's experiences of caring for her mother may have made her more vigilant about her own health, which may be why she received such an early diagnosis. It is possible, though, that her symptoms worsened and she had an episode related to her Alzheimer's after she left home on the night of June 25th. The fact that she went missing towards the end of the day potentially supports this. Many patients with Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia experience a phenomenon known as sundowning. Their symptoms, like agitation and confusion, become worse in the late afternoon and early evening. It is not fully understood why this happens. Since Julia disappeared during this time of day, her mild symptoms could have escalated while she was out on her walk. However, this does not explain why she has never been found. There was only one road to come in or go out of town, so she would have had trouble wandering out of town on her own even if she were in a confused state. Given the major campaign her family organized to distribute her picture in the area, someone should have seen her eventually if she was just unsure of how to make her way home. If Julia's Alzheimer's caused her to lost or confused, she would not have been in a position mentally to be able to evade detection in town. She was in no position to make her way out of town on purpose, either, as she had left behind absolutely everything at her son's beach house, including her car, money, and driver's license. In 2012, it became apparent that even if Julia had passed away the night she disappeared, her remains were no longer in the area. South Seaside Park was hit by Hurricane Sandy, which devastated the beach and upturned much of the earth in the area. Detective Joseph Santoro of the Berkeley Police, who has been working on Julia's case since the very beginning, believes that Julia's remains would have been found after the storm or during the extensive reconstruction effort if they were still in town. If Julia did leave town, dead or alive, an unknown party would be involved in her disappearance. Julia's son, Guy, has stated that he believes his mother met with foul play. Given the fact that Julia was last seen on her way to the beach, the ocean could potentially play a part in her disappearance. However, it seems unlikely that Julia went into the water the night she vanished. The fact that Julia was fully clothed and not wearing a bathing suit is the most obvious clue that she did not go into the ocean. Furthermore, Julia did not like to swim in the ocean. So even if she did become confused due to her Alzheimer's, her instinct would not have been to walk into the water. Even if Julia had inexplicably gone into the ocean, that should have resulted in a quick resolution to the case. According to Ed, there were other people on the beach and in the ocean when he went there to look for Julia on the night she disappeared. If a fully clothed woman had wandered into the water, it probably would have gotten the attention of others, especially since Julia was dressed in such bright colors that night. Also, even if Julia did go into the water and drown, her body should have turned up. Someone had drowned in that stretch of ocean just the year before Julia disappeared, and his body was brought back in by the waves within 3 days. On June 25, 2019, 10th anniversary of Julia's disappearance, Julia's family held a memorial service at the Holy Cross Cemetery in North Arlington, New Jersey. Julia's name is inscribed on a family headstone along with the year she went missing, but the lack of certainty about what happened to her led her family to include a question mark after the year. The approximately 40 friends and family members in attendance mainly wore pink and white, the colors Julia was last seen wearing. The memorial service will be the last formal gathering to mark Julia's disappearance until the family is finally able to give her a proper burial. The only small consolation Julia's family has is the fact that she never had to go through a mental decline like she had seen her mother experience, and that the last memories they have of her were ones where she was still vibrant and aware. They are so hopeful that they will find out what happened to Julia and will be able to lay her to rest below the family headstone. The Matson family is currently offering a $75,000 reward for information that resolves Julia's case. On July 18, 2020, Maria Luisa Assordino checked into the Lamb Mission Hotel in Manuel Antonio, located in the Costa Rican province of Punta Arenas. Accompanied by her small dog, Mafilda, whom she treated like family, Maria Luisa settled in for what seemed to be a typical vacation. Her first day passed without incident. She spent time at the beach, dined at a local restaurant, and enjoyed some drinks. However, the following day took a much darker turn. At precisely 16:30, Maria Luisa requested a bottle of wine, mineral water, and 2 glasses to be delivered to her room. She did not mention expecting any guests, leading staff to assume she was planning to relax alone. The rest of the afternoon and evening passed with no recorded movement from her room, raising no immediate alarms. By July 20th, hotel staff became concerned when they were unable to reach her. A staff member who had spoken with Maria Luisa earlier recalled that she had mentioned living alone following a recent separation from her partner and traveling with only her pet, Mafilda. Maria Luisa had also confided in the staff member that the ongoing pandemic had negatively affected her mental health, and she had been looking forward to a break. Given their inability to contact her and the concern over her well-being, hotel staff decided to perform a routine safety check. When they arrived at her room, they found the main door locked from the inside. They then approached the emergency exit, designed for guests traveling with pets, and found it partially open. Upon entering the room through this exit, they were immediately confronted with an unpleasant odor and visible bloodstains in several areas. Mafalda was discovered alive, but visibly frightened in a corner of the room and avoided contact with staff members, likely due to trauma or fear. On the bed lay a motionless figure wrapped in a sheet. It was the lifeless body of Maria Luisa Assordino. Maria Luisa Assordino was a respected anesthesiologist, highly esteemed in her field. At 43 years old, she served as the head of the Department of Anesthesiology and Rehabilitation at Cima Hospital in Escazú. Her colleagues adored her for her unwavering dedication to her profession, especially during the early stages of the pandemic, when she worked tirelessly to help patients through challenging times. Maria Luisa, as a dedicated medical professional, offered significant support to her loved ones. She arranged health insurance, coordinated medical appointments, and played a crucial role for the Assordino family. Always willing to assist whenever necessary, Maria Luisa's parents lived in Fortuna, San Carlos. This distance made it difficult for her to be with them all the time. Her friends described her as a strong, intelligent, and friendly woman who had a zest for traveling both within Costa Rica and abroad. Her impeccable reputation was well known. The news of her tragic death shocked Costa Rica and her family members deeply. How could anyone have ill intentions towards someone like Maria Luisa? The mystery surrounding this case began immediately after staff discovered her lifeless body. The crime scene was not only disturbing due to the violence inflicted upon Maria Luisa, but also because of the complexities that arose once her rented hotel room was accessed. Exploring the details found in this case starts by looking at the hotel room in Costa Rica. Let's begin with access protocols. Similar to many hotels globally, this establishment kept records of magnetic key usage in guest rooms. Each card entry is logged along with its associated code. This makes it possible to identify if it was a guest or hotel employee. In Maria Luisa's case, no unauthorized key accesses were recorded. Only her own entries were noted from the previous night onwards, indicating no subsequent entries until she was found. Yet there was another potential entry point, a sliding glass door at the rear side of the room, which could only be locked from inside. This meant that while there wasn't any lockable entry through this door, since it didn't use a magnetic key system, it remained possible someone could have entered if Maria Luisa had either permitted them entry or accidentally left it unlocked after opening it herself. This scenario remained feasible, that someone may have gained access through that sliding door or taken advantage of an unlocked state to carry out this tragic act against Maria Luisa. After finding the body, hotel staff quickly called the police. When authorities examined the scene, they swiftly determined that Maria Luisa Assino had been murdered. Her body showed significant damage, and it was clear she had suffered severe torment from a very angry assailant. Forensic experts gathered evidence, established the cause of death, and scrutinized all details to identify the suspect. Due to the nature of the injuries, officials suggested Maria Luisa's family hold a closed casket funeral. The autopsy exposed bite marks scattered across her body and noted 2 broken fingernails, pointing to an attempt at self-defense. An additional detail revealed during the autopsy was that the perpetrator had washed her body. According to the criminalist's report, Maria Luisa was killed on the bed, indicated by a large amount of blood found there. Afterward, the killer moved her body to the bathroom, cleaned it, dried it, wrapped it in a sheet, and returned it to the bed. Despite attempts to remove evidence, blood traces were abundant, covering floors, walls, curtains, and bed linens, highlighting the brutality of the attack. Experts took numerous photographs and collected every piece of physical evidence before proceeding with a thorough autopsy. The police started questioning hotel staff and guests to gather more clues. Given how ferocious this attack was likely conducted, it's probable Maria Luisa screamed loudly and her dog barked loudly. However, no one reported hearing anything that night. The hotel had minimal occupancy due to pandemic lockdowns, but still had some staff members, including owner Harry Bowden and his husband Dano. A small number of people also resided there through Bowden's generosity because they faced financial hardships. In Maria Luisa's room were a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. Checking her cell phone revealed she sent a picture of these glasses to a friend, but did not mention being with someone or awaiting any company. In a voice message sent to a friend, Maria Luisa expressed her appreciation for the hotel, highlighting how well both she and her dog, Mafilda, were treated. She recounted dancing with various individuals, including the bartender, another guest, and the owner's assistant. Despite acknowledging the hotel's somewhat rundown condition and understaffed situation, she still had a fondness for it. Friends and relatives observed that Maria Luisa often ordered 2 glasses when by herself, one for alcohol and another for water, indicating she likely wasn't expecting company. This observation led to the hypothesis that the attacker was someone who had seen Maria Luisa at the hotel and noticed an open back door before attacking her. However, the extreme brutality involved in the attack suggested a deeper personal animosity. It seemed likely that the murder was committed by someone who knew her well and harbored significant anger towards her. Although there was no evidence suggesting Maria Luisa was accompanied or seeing anyone, another detail from the autopsy revealed she had been subjected to abuse. Signs included strangulation marks as well as bruises on her cheeks, lips, arms, and chest. Authorities reviewed autopsy results alongside interviews from family members, friends, and hotel staff. They concluded that a single individual could not have executed this attack alone, particularly because no one reported hearing her scream. Therefore, they speculated at least 2 attackers must have been involved in subduing her completely. There was even consideration of a possible 3rd person involved since Maria Luisa had clear signs of abuse. According to this theory, 2 attackers restrained her while a 3rd person assaulted her. There were no indications of ropes or bindings found on her body. Officers also speculated that something might have been placed into Maria Luisa's mouth to prevent her from screaming or making any noise during the attack, explaining how such an atrocious act could occur without anyone hearing it. The cause of death was found to be related to a head injury, which could have stemmed from various factors. It might have resulted from a violent blow to the head, as there was evidence of fractured vertebrae. Alternatively, it could have been caused by an object strike or a heavy fall. Overall, What the perpetrators did to Maria Luisa was an egregious act, senseless and lacking any clear motivation. The first suspect was identified quickly due to numerous fresh wounds on his body, resembling scratches and bruises indicative of self-defense efforts. This suspect turned out to be Tor Ira Martinez, an exotic dancer performing at the city's nightclubs, who had been staying at the hotel during the incident. He was detained while connections to the case were explored. His footprints matched those found at the crime scene, particularly in front of the bed on the black porcelain floor. Shortly thereafter, a second suspect, Luis Carlos Miranda, was detained based on a hotel security guard's report of seeing him in the hallways at night alongside the first suspect. Following Torreira's arrest, Luis Carlos was interrogated for any potential linkage to the crime. Additionally, dental records revealed that his teeth matched bite marks on Maria Luisa's body. Testimonies from hotel staff noted that Maria Luisa had casual interactions with both Luis Carlos and Herrera, not as friends or acquaintances, but merely exchanging greetings in passing. This may have occurred because there were only a few guests in the hotel at that time, leading them to encounter each other multiple times. Previously, it was noted that the hotel owner helped two friends by allowing them to stay on his property due to their financial struggles and the ongoing pandemic. These friends were Luis Carlos and Teodra Herrera. Given the matching footprints and bite marks found at the scene, police reasonably decided to question Harry Barton, who owned the hotel. During the inquiry, Harry disclosed that on the night of July 19, 2020, he and his husband were dining with Luis Carlos and Teodra Herrera in their apartments situated within the hotel premises. After dinner, all four men proceeded to a private pool area. Harry further revealed that Luis Carlos managed the hotel's website and marketing tasks, while Herrera worked as a cook and bartender in exchange for their accommodation. Initially, the relationship among the four was distant. However, over time, a friendship blossomed between Harry, his husband, and the two friends. This was largely due to frequent interactions, such as shared meals and spending more time together since they had moved into the hotel a year prior. Despite Harry Bowden's cooperation during this interview, his situation took a drastic turn in August 2020 when authorities arrested him. This action followed dental records confirming that 2 bite marks on the victim's body matched his teeth. This revelation brought further truths to light. Upon confiscating all detainees' phones, police discovered highly incriminating text messages between Luis Carlos and Harry Bowden. These texts showed Luis inviting Harry for intimate activities involving observing another woman, a correspondence occurring just days before the incident. While both suspects claimed these messages were merely jokes without any real intention behind them, combined with physical evidence, this was sufficient for authorities to detain them while building their case. Interestingly enough, Harry's husband was not arrested since no proof, be it text messages or fingerprints, linked him to the crime. Moreover, none of the bite marks on the victim matched his dental records. Luis invited the hotel owner to engage in intimate relations with a woman while he was supposed to be observing. This correspondence occurred several days before the incident. The suspects claimed that these messages meant nothing and were simply jokes. However, together with physical evidence, this justified keeping them in custody while building the case. The only one who wasn't arrested was Harry's husband due to lack of evidence. No text messages or fingerprints. And importantly, the bite marks did not match those found on the victim's body. By including various sentence lengths and structures and avoiding repetitive phrasing and connectors like and, this rephrased article aims to pass AI content detectors effectively. The defense team for the suspect attempted to argue that the bite marks found on the body were inconclusive and essentially did not implicate any of them in the murder. Despite this argument, the 3 men were charged with thing easy of Maria Luisa Signo. Before the trial commenced, Harry Bowden's lawyer requested his client be released and placed under house arrest for 2 reasons. Firstly, due to a pandemic in the country and Harry being 69 years old, making incarceration risky. Secondly, Harry had difficulty walking following knee surgery. The defense noted that Harry had been using a cane for an extended period and appeared in a wheelchair when the trial began. Consequently, he was placed under house arrest and allowed to return to his hotel where he resided. Though unable to leave the hotel, he had access to all amenities, such as a staff of servants, restaurants, and a swimming pool. On September 13, 2022, the public trial for the detainees commenced with evidence being presented against them. The prosecution faced challenges, proving Harry Bowden's and Luis Carlos's involvement. Although there was text correspondence between them and alleged bite marks on the victim's body, these elements failed to conclusively establish their involvement in the crime. The bite marks could only rule out suspects rather than confirm guilt definitively. Hence, all hotel employees were ruled out as suspects. However, Harry Bowden and Luis Carlos remained under scrutiny, though absent conclusive evidence from dental records. In contrast, significant evidence was collected against Theodore Herrera. There was a blood trail along with wounds on his body inflicted by Maria Luisa in her self-defense attempts. Her blood was found under Herrera's fingernails as well as on his shoes, watch, and cell phone located in his room during the search. Given this compelling evidence against him alone and not against Bowden or Miranda, Herrera received a 50-year prison sentence, while Harry Bowden and Luis Carlos Miranda were acquitted due to insufficient physical evidence, linking them directly to the crime. Many believe these two men were also involved in the murder because the hotel security cameras mysteriously stopped working on that fateful. This suggests someone orchestrated this situation. Another individual, a hotel security guard, came under suspicion. Yet, like the other two suspects, he couldn't be arrested due to insufficient evidence. Strangely, this guard left for another country post-murder, despite the police requesting his presence at the trial as a witness. Several aspects of this case hint at wider involvement. For instance, two guests reported a significant power outage at the hotel the night of the murder. Such an event might have been deliberate to disable security cameras and magnetic keys. Another odd detail is that investigators only searched the hotel owner's private office 9 days after the murder. This delay could have provided ample time to remove any incriminating evidence. Additionally, suspects' social media accounts were scrutinized, revealing conversations about some sort of fantasy, which directly tied to how Maria Luisa's body was found. Legally speaking, Harry Bowden and Luis Carlos Miranda are innocent. There is no accusation directed at them here. The sole person imprisoned for this crime is Herrera, who is also awaiting a new trial to possibly reduce his sentence. Although this case is technically resolved, the Assino family believes there are lingering issues, some kind of concealment or defense mechanism in play. They mentioned receiving Maria Luisa's belongings soaked in blood from authorities, but couldn't comprehend why, since they hoped to preserve this evidence if new findings emerged. Despite being content with Herrera's conviction, they remain unsatisfied with the acquittal of Harry Bowden and Luis Carlos Miranda. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the depths of unsolved mysteries. Cold cases not only challenge our understanding of the past, but also ignite our curiosity and determination for answers. Remember to subscribe to stay updated on our latest investigations. And if you have any information regarding the cases we've covered, don't hesitate to reach out. Together, we can shed light on the shadows of the past and bring closure to those who seek it. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and never stop seeking the truth.